So we will be finishing lesson 21 today. We are a little behind schedule. I had high hopes of getting through lesson 23 today. So, some things on the schedule will get pushed back. But we're still going to try and have the unit test by next Friday. That's exactly 7 days. It's either next Friday or it might get pushed back. But I don't want you to just rely on that. Be ready for it by Friday. So it was a big unit. There was a lot of stuff in it, like systems of equations, solving equations. Now we're on inequalities and systems of inequalities. Almost done. Everything though is recorded. The study guide is in Schoology for the top, says study guide / practice test. That's basically what your test is gonna look like. So even if you're like, wow, this is a lot of stuff to review and go over, make sure you at least know how to do, I forget how many problems, like 12 problems it is on that study guide practice test. And then if you don't, you need to ask questions, whether it's in class, whether it's in tutoring, mind you, only have tutoring on Wednesdays, or through email. Like there was a year where we taught from home and you guys learned from home. Students know how to ask questions. It's possible to learn from asking me questions through email, and my response is usually like either typed up, or I took a picture of my work shown, or I sent a voice memo, whatever. But you not asking means that you're all good. And if you're not all good, then you need to be out. So today's specific lesson 21 is to find out how to use graphs to represent solutions to inequalities in two variables. I recorded the warm-up of it that we did yesterday, and I will record today. The puzzle piece will be lesson 21. And again, I had high hopes of getting through more, so there's more stuff in here. Just keep in mind, we're trying to get the unit 2 test done by next day. That's the big deadline. So that's also the deadline for late work from unit 2. So if you've been letting it pile up, so that you're getting through it over the weekend, and all the puzzle pieces for the entire unit have been available. All right, so let me erase all of the answers. The big part of this is being able to graph inequalities. Yes, I know you have Desmos, and you get to use Desmos on the test and on your quizzes. It's a great tool to check your answers for sure. But you don't get to use it on your ACT, SAT, and either way, you need to know the algebra for it for your higher level math classes. So even though, yeah, there's shortcuts, we're gonna learn how to do it too, because that's important. So the main thing today is solutions versus not solutions. I have this linear inequality. It's actually the same one from the warm-up. Now, if I'm going to solve it by graphing, that's really the only way to solve linear inequalities is by graphing it. What form should it be in before I graph it? Good. So if you want to write these steps somewhere, those steps for graphing linear inequalities. Yeah. It's the one that so I just handed it. Yeah, maybe it's another time. Looks like this. Yeah. So maybe this looks familiar on one of the sides of the pages. So then we did this yesterday if you want to look at it. Basically, all we did was plug in the X and Y and see if it was less than, greater than, or equal to 12. All right, and you all have a coordinate plane on your paper, right? Okay, so good. Next to the coordinate plane, write your steps for graphing linear inequalities. So first is to convert to slope-intercept form, your y equals mx plus b. Just know that since it's an inequality, it's not going to be like your normal equal sign. It's one of the 4 inequalities. Then, and for y equals mx plus b, what needs to be alone? The y needs to be alone. Good. So in this problem that we're doing, we're going to want to get the y by itself. What would need to move then? The 2x would need to move first. It's farther, so move that. How do you cancel it out? Subtract 2x, whatever you do on one side. Good. So other side of the inequality symbol. So that gives me 3y less than or equal to 10x, or what? Would that be right? No. And I see kids do that a lot. Are these like terms? No, because one has an x and the other one doesn't. So you can't combine them. You just basically write them next to each other. And you could write it 12 minus 2x, but since we're converting it to mx plus b, I'm going to write the x term first. So negative 2x plus 12. 12 is still positive, 2x is still negative. All right, is the y alone? How can I get it alone? Dividing by 3 is correct. You have to do the opposite of what's being done. Whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. Now remember, you have to do it to both terms on the other side. So then, if you want to write it like this to help you remember, then do that. Do I also have to flip the sign at all for subtracting or dividing by a positive? No. So always check that too. So no, we don't have to keep the sign the same. Can slope be a fraction? Yes, as long as it's a simplified fraction, which this is. And what about 12 over 3? Good, it equals 4, plus 4. So now it's in slope intercept form. So that was step 1. Convert to y to mx plus b, which basically means y by 12. Step 2. What do we usually plot first? We do not plot x. No. Well, it's better than the silent. I'll tell you that. What do we usually plot first when we're graphing? The b, which is your 4, which is your, what's like the formal name for it? Is your y-intercept. So plot your y-intercept, or in other words, your b first. So, and yes, the b is the single number, so the 4. Is that above or below the origin? Above, it's right here on your y-axis. And look, your y and x-axis are labeled. But either way, it is always x to the left, y to the side. Okay? Some of you, I can tell, aren't paying attention and aren't taking notes. Like, I'm giving you gold here. So I don't want to hear anything about the grades otherwise. Anyway, you plot your y-intercept. Then how do you know what your next dot is going to be? What do you use to find your next dot? Good. So use slope, which is what letter in y to the mx plus b? Good. To plot next point. All right, and what is the m always in front of? The x. So keep that in mind. If you're ever confused, sometimes they do write them backwards. Sometimes they write 4 minus 2/3 x. 4 is still the y-intercept, because it's still the single number, and the negative 2/3 is still the slope, still in front of the x. All right, so my slope in this one we said is -2/3. And what's like the formula for slope? Rise over run. So the top tells me if I go up or down. If it's a negative, we go down, and we're going down too from the y-intercept. And then to the right is always how it's going to be for your run. And how many do I go? 3. 1, 2, 3. Rise over run. Down 2, to the right. 1. And put enough points until you can make your line. Now with this one, now that we're in inequalities, so like these first 3 steps are also just for normal graphing lines. But since we're now dealing with inequality symbols, you have to use the symbol to determine, so write that down too. Use the symbol to determine solid versus dash. And shaded above or below. Because when we solve the inequalities, was there always just one answer, like equations? No. There was a bunch of answers, and that's how it's going to be with these linear inequalities too. There's going to be a bunch of answers. So you can visually see the bunch of answers when we graph. Now, do you remember which symbols are for solid lines? Think about like when we typed it into Desmos. Greater than or equal to is one of them. What's the other? Good. So think about when we typed it into Desmos. It gave you a solid line on that graph. When it was a dashed line, what symbols was it? Good. The ones without the equal to. So if it's a solid line, are the coordinates on that line part of the answer? Or are they excluded? If I were looking at points on a solid line, is that included in the answer or no? Yeah, it's included. Just like how the equal to would be like a close same concept. All right, now we also have the shading for above and below. Now that one is different. So shading above is anytime it's y greater than or y greater than or equal to, and do put the y in there. That matters. For below, it would be the opposite. Y less than or y less than or equal. So this is like your key for that part. Here's your steps. Okay. Questions on anything so far? All right. If you're running drastically behind on the notes, feel free to like not picture right now. Okay. Looking at our symbol, would this be a solid line or a dashed line? Raise your hand if you think solid. Raise your hand if you think dashed. All right, well, since there's that little line underneath,
yeah,
it is solid. So if you haven't already, draw a solid line through your 3 points. Right, just draw as straight a line as you can. It will be solid. Will it be shaded above or below? Below, because it matches our key. You would have to memorize that later on, or like the test, the unit test. That's on your unit test. But since it's less than, we're basically saying that the y values are smaller than the line. So if that is easier to remember, that's what I do. I don't remember. I look at what's bigger in the relationship, the y or the line itself. And on the line itself, that y-intercept is 4, right? So we're basically saying y is smaller than 4. So all of these y values are smaller than 4. Just like lightly shaded.
Why do you have to shade?
You have to shade because all of this below the line is a solution. So also, usually I'll put a big S for solution so that you guys remember. Shaded are your solutions. Shading displays like this is my picture. All right, now these coordinates are from the warm-up, if you remember when we did it yesterday. Plot these coordinates on your coordinate plane. You guys know how to do that? Easy enough. If not, what order do the coordinates go in? X and then Y. So here's my x-axis. 0 on my x would be here. 5 on my y would be up here. And so I'm plotting that point. You can even label it, I guess, if you want, because we're going to figure stuff out about this in a second. But plot the rest of the points. All right, so compare your dots to mine. See if you made any mistakes. So, and I color coded it so you can see 0, 5, 6, 0, -1, -1, and -5, 10. Good, anyone? Questions? Oh, you're just plotting the coordinates. All right, because a great test question is, given this linear inequality, is -5, 10 a solution? Oh no.
Oh.
I asked about this one. Sorry, I didn't go in order. No, it's not, because is it in the shaded area? No. Is it on a solid line? No. So it's not a solution. So then now take a little bit of time and determine if these are solutions. So we'll do that kind of together, I guess. Just don't shout it out. Yes. Yes. So everyone, just think right now if the 0, 5 is a solution. Think about it. All right, now all at one time, is 0, 5 a solution? No. Good. Is it in the shaded area? Is it on a solid line? So it's not. Plus, when we did it earlier, and I wish I had the work saved from yesterday, but when we plugged it in, wasn't it less than 12? Yeah. So that makes sense. It didn't make it true for this one, which says that it would be, well, I mean, you have to, it was greater than 12. Yes. Sorry. It was 15, which is not less than 12, right? So that makes sense. You can do it algebraically, you can do it by graphing. Now, is 0 a solution? Think yes, you already said it, yes. Why is it a solution? It's on the line and the line is solid. If it was on a dashed line, would it be a solution? No. What about -1, -1? Yes. It's in the shaded area. Question? All right, so keep these steps like in your mind. Hopefully you have them. Hopefully you have this example and the key. We are going to now practice. Some of these I can understand how they might confuse you, but follow the steps. Convert them into slope and intercept form. Plot your y-intercept. Use your slope to find your next point. Then look at your symbol. Am I going to shade? Am I above or below? Am I going to do a solid line or a dashed line? Get through as much as you can. There's 4 there. So within your groups, you could divide and conquer. You can try them all yourself if you're more independent. We're going to go over them in about 6 minutes. If you finish early, you can have your practice open and work on that, but definitely try these so that you can compare answers. All right, now follow the steps. First one, is it in slope intercept form? Why do you say that? In slope intercept form, what is alone? Is the y alone in this one? So yes, if it's easier to view it where it's like the y written first, it's okay to flip it, but you have to keep the relationships the same. Like y is still smaller than the x according to the opening of the symbol, right? So if this is easier for you to look at, go ahead. But since the y is alone, it is in slope intercept form. So then move on to step 2, which is to do what? Plot your y-intercept. What is my y-intercept? It is 0. Because which of these letters represents your y-intercept? I hear a lot of like random talking, but it's like not answering the question. So yes, the B is your y-intercept. If it's not written, what must it be? 0, because do we ever write +0? No, that's not simplest form, right? So if it's not written, my y-intercept must be 0. So then put a dot where y is 0. Next, you plot, how do you find your next dot? What do you use? You use your slope, which is always in front of the x in the equation. So what's the number in front of the x if there's no number written? 1. If it was 0, then the x wouldn't be there at all. 0 times x is 0. If it's just an x alone, definitely has to be a 1 in front. Now, slope is supposed to be rise over run. So if my slope is 1, my rise is, and my run is 1. So then slope should be a fraction. If it's a whole number, all whole numbers are over 1. So then from your y-intercept, go up 1 over 1. Up 1 over 1 until you have enough to make a straight line. But remember, you have to use a symbol to tell you if it's solid or dashed. So what is it? Use your key until you find a good way to remember it. Looking at my symbol, it is solid. Because it has the equal to underneath. So anything on the line should be an answer, so it needs to be solid. Question so far? Now, is it shaded above or below? Good. I'm glad you guys didn't get confused with that, because if you look at how it's originally represented to you. Some might say above just because of the way it's facing. But that's why I made you guys write the Y, so that you know you have to have the Y smaller in that situation, the shade below. All right, so then shade below the line. That means that the Y's are smaller than the line. So the line had a 0 for the y-intercept, and you need to shade all the Y's that are smaller than 0. Or right here. Question on the first one. All right, let's keep going. Let's see if we can cover all of them, and then you can find it out. So number 2, is that one in slope-intercept form? No. How can I make it slope-intercept form? Get y by itself. So undo what's being done to the y. Opposite of multiplying -2 is whatever you do on one side. Anything significant about that? My sign flipped because you divided a negative on each side, remember? Don't forget that stuff. That would affect your shading above or below, so that's important. And then -4 divided by -2 is 2. And now it's in slope-intercept form. Now we can actually graph it. Okay. When you graph, what do you plot first? Now here's a good reminder. If you're like, oh, there's only one number there, I don't know what it represents. The single number is always your y-intercept. So this 2 must be my y-intercept. So put a dot on the 2. But if you're like, there's no x, what do I do? If there's no x, what must the slope be? 0. Because 0 times x is 0. So if the x completely cancels out, the slope is 0. All right, so your rise is 0. You're not rising at all. Your run is technically always 1 if it's a whole number. I know 0 is not really a whole number, but if there's no denominator of the fraction, then it's 1. So what I get is a line that looks something like this. Will it be solid or dashed based on the symbol? I agree. Sorry, I tried using a different symbol. And then shaded above or below? Below, because it's less than. Question? Because anytime that doesn't have that line underneath the symbol, so like here it has a line underneath, here it doesn't, it's going to be down. Because anything that's on the line will not be included. Questions about that? All right, so then next one. This one, I can see why you could find it confusing because there's no y, is there? So just like when there's no x, you get like a straight line with like no, I don't know, slant to it. This is also going to be a straight line. But here's how you can reason through it in case you forget. Since there's no y to isolate, what other variable could I isolate? How can I get the x by itself? Whatever you do on one side, do to the other side. So x is alone. What's 0 divided by 3? 0. Now, how can I explain this? Okay, let me go back up to this real quick. When it was just the y in the problem, we drew a line where all the y values are 2. Right? Like here it is 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. All the y values are 2. Over here, we're going to draw a line where all the x values are 0. So while I take this call, think about where that would be.
Miss Medina. I do.
So then where can I draw a line where all the x values are 0? Where would that be? Like here's the x-axis. Where is it 0? In the middle, right? And if I draw it, if you're like confused whether it's vertical or horizontal, kind of test it out. If I draw it vertical, are all the x values 0 on that line? Yeah, it goes 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, you know those in order x, y. So then I do it the right way. If I do it the other way, like no, there's different x values all across this line, so that doesn't make sense. All right. And why is it a dashed line on this? Zero is not included in the solution. It's less than, not less than or equal to. And take this option. And then to know where to shade, since there's no y to compare it to, you're going to shade where the x values are less than 0. So would that be left or right? Left. That's where the x values are less than 0. I know these, like, I try to show you how to reason through them in case you forget, like now. But when in doubt, what can you always use to check? All right, but yes. Just one more. Hopefully you guys tried it already. Yes, questions? You can go now, or when okay, try this one. We'll see how we got it. All right, so in this one, do I need to convert it to slope-intercept form? Is it already in slope-intercept form? So then you do need to convert it. How do you convert it to slope-intercept form? Get y by itself by, how do you cancel the x? Whatever you do on one side. Good. Now you could just leave it like that, y greater than 10 minus x. But I think it's a good habit to, well, first of all, do I need to flip the sign? No, so leave the sign the same. But it's a good habit to write the x term first, just so that you don't get confused later. Or which one's the slope and which one's the y-intercept. But sometimes they will write it like this, and you just have to know the single number is always y-intercept, the number in front of the x is always the slope. All right, then continue with the rest of the problem. What do I plot next? Which is, so y-intercept you plot next. Put it where y is 10, it would be right there. How do I plot my next point? Use a slope. What is my slope in this one? -1/1. Right? If there's not a number in front of the x, but there is an x there, then it's assumed to be 1. And then if it's a whole number, put it over 1, so you divide. So my rise then is -1. Does that mean I go up or down? Down 1. And then if my run is 1, I go to the right 1. Down 1 to the right 1. Down 1 to the right 1. Good. Solid or dashed? Dashed. There's no equal sign underneath it. And is it shaded above or below? Above. So then lightly shade above. If you're ever confused what side is above, look at y should be bigger than what's on the line. Yes. Because it's y greater. And just like in the first one, it was flipped, it was x greater than the y. You have to look at is y bigger or small. And in this one, it is. All right, questions, comments, concerns? So there's a practice for you to work on. We just finished lesson 21, but really all of them should be done up to this point. Work on it till the end of class. If you have questions, let me know.